All right, so let's continue our conversation about our client side data storage techniques. So, in the last part of this module, the first part of this module, you looked at JSON, which is our JavaScript object notation, which is a language that we use to structure our data for transfer from, across the system or storing in a database or what have you. So we're going to use two client-side technologies to store JSON for us. The first of which is what we call HTML local storage. All right, so with local storage, your application can store the data locally within the user's browser, right? So instead of having to round trip and go back to the database, we can store it locally in the browser. And one of the newest frameworks that I love is called Meteor.js. If you get a chance to check it out, it takes advantage of this client-side storage as well, right? You'll see I'm starting with local storage and session storage because that is what we will probably use more often. And then later on, we'll talk about the older technology, which is cookies, right? But this is more prevalent to how you would do it because local storage is more secure than cookies, and it can store a larger amount of data locally without affecting our website's performance. Okay? So, how do we access local storage? All right, so let's take a look at it. We have two objects with local storage. One is window.local storage, which stores the data and it does not have an expiration date. All right. The other is session storage, which stores the data only for the session. So remember, session starts when the user opens the browser and the session ends when the user closes the browser. So local storage is stored no matter how long. It doesn't expire whether they open or close the browser or not. We have to explicitly remove any data we store in local storage. Session storage will only exist for that user session. Okay? So let's say we wanted to check if you want to make sure that the browser that the user has actually has support for local storage. So we do a simple check with an if statement, basically doing something like this. So if type of storage, if I can type it, not equal to undefined, right? That tells us that local storage exists. If not, we know it doesn't. All right, so that's how we would handle a check in our code to see if local storage is actually available to us to use. If not, we probably have some code in here that falls back on using cookies or something else, or actually sending it back to the server to store server side in the database. All right, so let's take a look at the local storage object first. All right, so let's look at how we add data to the local storage. So we first say local storage, and this is the same code. I'm typing it in the browser console, but you can use the same syntax in your actual JavaScript, okay? So local storage, right? Notice it's a lowercase l and an uppercase s. So if you just mistype that, it won't work correctly. Notice that when I hit dot, the items or the methods available to me on the local storage actually popped up. So you notice remove item, set item, which are our most important items. So if we want to save an item in our local storage, we're going to use set item. All right. So how do we use set item? Set item takes two values. It takes the value, a key name, right? So let's say I want to store the last name of my user. So it takes a key. So the first value is the key, the name that we're storing our value under. In this case, I'm using last name, right? And then the value you want to remember is the second value or the second argument. All right, let's try another one. Let's say I had a username that I wanted to remember. So I'm storing it under username, and I'm saying the name or the value is Tillman. So I will have a key called username with a value of Tillman. All right, so now that stores it in local storage. Well, how do we access it? How do we access it? All right. We're going to use get item to retrieve it. Get item takes the key. So if I say username, what should I get back? Let's see what's in user now. There it is, Tillman. So I said local storage. Let's store it in a variable. Last name equals local storage get item. And I said last name, right? All right. So if I say last name, there it is, Tillman. All right. So that's how we store and retrieve values in local storage. All right. So we can also do the same thing like this. Let's see. Let's just say password. We can attach the value directly with a assignment. GoFundMe, I guess, I don't know. All right. So if I say var p-word equals local storage dot password, I can retrieve it just like that. All right. I prefer the object syntax personally. All right. So now remember we said that these values would persist whether the user closed their browser or didn't. So you don't want a bunch of values just sitting around in your user's local storage forever and forever and forever. So let's say we actually want to physically remove it. Then we type local storage dot remove item. Now let's say password. In this case, you're going to pass it the key. So now if I say local storage dot password, I should get undefined. Right, there you go. All right, or just so you can see the other syntax. Password is null. There we go. All right, so let's remove the last name that we put in there. Again, we're going to use the key that we stored it under, which was last name. All right, so if I go last name, I should see no. There we go, so that's gone. So let me actually also delete our username. All right, so what did we look at? Let's do a quick summary over that. We said that local storage stores data client side in the browser and persist even after they close the browser. All right. We also said that our three prime methods that we will use were the get item, which retrieves an item if we pass it a key, set item, which takes a key and the value that you want to pass, and remove item, which takes the key of the value that you want to remove. All right. We said that data is stored in key value pairs, the key, i.e. last name, and the value, Tillman, the key, i.e. username, value, Tillman. So we use key value pairs to store our data in the local storage. All right, so let's continue on and we'll talk about the session storage object, right? So session storage is just like local storage. However, the data goes away when we close the browser. It's only valid during the current session. A session starts when the user opens their browser, and a session ends when the user closes their browser. So if I go to my shopping cart, if I go to a page that has a shopping cart and they're using local storage, session storage, and they store my cart items in my session storage, and I don't purchase them and I close my web page, When I open the web page back, those items are gone from my cart. However, if they were using local storage and they stored those items in my cart, if I closed the browser and came back, those items would still be in my cart. Okay? All right, so with session storage, we pretty much have the same set of methods, nothing special. All right, so we type it the same way, camel case. And if you notice, we have the same get item, we have the same set item, and the same remove item. So we use it exactly the same way. All right, so that is it for local storage and session storage. Let me know if you have any questions. Take care.